My name is Shannon Davidson.
I'm Tom DuPont. We're with CodeSmith Tools.
And tonight we're going to talk about Plinqo, which we more affectionately refer to as supercharged Linq to SQL.
First question.
Huh?
First question.
Yes, sir. Tonight we'd like to learn a little bit more about what you guys have experienced. Before tonight, has everybody heard of CodeSmith, first of all? Everybody? How many of you use CodeSmith at your office or personally? Most of you? Cool. We're going to assume a knowledge of CodeSmith tonight, but I will go through a little bit of how our CodeSmith projects are set up.
So how many of you use or have used Linq to SQL? Okay, good number. All right. Our presentation requires a little bit of Linq to SQL knowledge because it's going to be about enhancing features. But those of you who don't know too much about it, don't worry, you're not going to be lost.
And lastly, before tonight, has anybody heard or messed with Plinqo? One, yes.
All right, well, we're going to fix that. Our goal tonight is to make sure that everyone knows about Plinqo.
So let's get started. Tom, why don't you tell us about Plinqo?
What is Plinqo? Well, first of all, Plinqo is a set of CodeSmith templates, and their job is to replace and enhance Linq to SQL. So what that's going to do is it's going to open the Linq to SQL black box. It's going to give you control over your code from when you generate to when you rerun it to when you customize it. You are in control. You're going to have the ability to control that source. Also, it's going to enhance existing functionality as well as add new features to Linq to SQL. So what we're trying to say here is that this is Linq to SQL, but better. So this is our agenda for this evening, and we're going to talk about all these bullets tonight. I don't want to dive into them right now. We just wanted to put this up here to give you the scope of what Plinqo is and what it has to offer. So let's get started.
First thing we want to let you know about is Plinqo comes with a quick start. What the quick start does is it gives you the ability to get in there quickly and see what Plinqo does, what Plinqo has to offer. The first things that you'll notice when you start up Plinqo or start up the quick start is that you get a complete working solution in 30 seconds. When you hit the quick start, you'll notice Visual Studio will pop up for you. You have the option to create a complete dynamic data UI. It also creates you, of course, the Plinqo data project. And we put a test project in there. We call it test, but it doesn't do anything right now. It's just there to remind us that we need to put in some unit tests later. So hammer us about that if you want to. So let's go in and look at the quick start. So quick start is a CodeSmith template. Let's double click that. So to make this easy so you can get in and look at Plinqo, the only thing that you're required to do is select a database. So we've pre-configured a pet shop data source. So Tom will select that. If you'll notice, all of the other properties are automatically set for you with what we determined the most popular way of using it. You'll see a language option. Plinqo is offered in VB and C#, so you can use either language. Also, you can control the path. You can name your solution, name your projects. You can choose the query pattern that you want. We have a couple of different ones that we'll talk about in a minute. You can name your UI project. Just set a couple of different property settings just to help you get into the project and name things the way that you like. So click Generate, Tom, and let's see it work.
We say in under 30 seconds, so start your watches. All right. Shannon, which directory is that under?
It's libraries, documents. Other one. Templates, right there. One feature of the quick start that you just saw is if you generate it once, we will not generate it again and overwrite anything that you have already generated. In that case, if you want to generate multiple times, you'd have to put it in a separate location. So actually, it worked as designed, even though it did not appear that way. Let's click it again.
Okay, now start your watches, hopefully. A little better.
So clicking Generate, it opens up a Visual Studio solution with 3 projects, the UI, the test project I discussed, and the Pet Shop data project. You'll notice in the data project there isn't anything in there right now, but in a minute you will see that CodeSmith does generate many files for you. So let's click Run.
And that CSP is going to generate on build.
Yes.
So we set our startup project?
Yes. Hit run. Let's see what happens. So you click the quick start, or double click the quick start, set a few options, hit run. You can now mess with Plinqo. You can now run around in this dynamic data UI. You can edit, update, insert, anything that you want to do to update the data. We have a full CRUD UI here, edit, delete, everything that you would want to do with dynamic data initially. So now you're ready to start your project. Another thing, when you generate Linq to SQL code in the standard way, you have to go in the designer. You have to create a new set of Linq to SQL classes. It creates the DB, or it creates a designer. It puts a designer with no entities on there. You have to go select those yourself, drag them onto the designer, and then it generates the code for you. Although it generates the code in sort of a black box fashion, and you can't update or alter that code. CodeSmith gives you the opportunity to generate the DB-mail. It also maintains it for you. I'm sorry, CodeSmith, Plinqo in this case, using CodeSmith. Generates that DB-mail, maintains it for you. The other thing that we found in using Linq to SQL is that it's kind of frustrating that all the classes are in one file. It's a little hard to find things. It's also hard to update and maintain it. What Plinqo does for you is it organizes all of your entities into separate files, partial classes. We have a partial class file for the generated portion and for the editable portion. The generated is an actively generated file, so I'll explain active generation for a second. When you actively generate a file, that means your CodeSmith template is your source. You do not edit that file. If you edit that file or update that file, then you click regenerate, all of your updates are gone. So when you want to update the source of a generated file, you update your template because that is your source. The editable files, in this case we generate one for each entity, manager, query extension, data context, is the place where you add your custom code to Plinqo. So when you want to enhance, which you will, you'll want to enhance your entities, then you add that code here. So let's go back in and look at that for a second. So when we ran there, we had this CSP. Let's open up the CSP for a second. CodeSmith project. So under the Plinqo, this is still CodeSmith. You can create this manually without going through the quick start, without double clicking the quick start if you want. All of these are automatically added by the quick start. You have 3 templates here. It's the DB-mail, entities, and queries. You can also have a manager's template as well if you choose the manager pattern. So each of these templates, you can edit them, update the properties however you want to customize it, because it is still CodeSmith. It is still your code, so you can customize it and do whatever it is that you want. So let's go back. And to explain a CSP, I don't know how many people, has everybody worked with CSPs? I didn't really ask that. Nobody? So a CSP is a CodeSmith project. What a CSP is, it is an XML file. It's full of a property set, or several property sets. And what you can do there is you can rerun all of your templates from this CSP. It also will allow you to automatically build your file or generate your file within Visual Studio every time you compile the project. So let's, you gonna turn that off?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll look at what got generated. We see all the entities. We're looking at the Pet Shop database. We see all the entities from the Pet Shop database. So if we open up the generated file, one thing that we do with the generated files is we stick them technically in a code behind from the editable files. That's so that it makes it a little bit tougher to accidentally update files that you don't want to update that could get overwritten. So as you'll see as the organization of the files, as I mentioned a minute ago, you get a partial class for every entity and every query. Also, you can see in the classes that we decorate each of the classes with several attributes. You can also use data services out of the box with Plinqo, so that we chose chose yes on the quick start, so we're adding data services attributes to all of the entities. And then you can see also that the code is nicely organized and easy to read, easy to see what's going on. Let's go look at the editable class for a second. In the editable class, This contains a private metadata class that Tom will talk about in a second. You can also create your custom code in this class. Any code that you want to enhance your entities, your managers, or your query extensions, you can do that here.
Okay, so we just looked at some of the structural advantages of Plinqo over Linq to SQL. Let's talk about when you have to regenerate and when you have to update. If you've used Linq to SQL, you know that updating your code can be a little bit frustrating. When you want to bring in changes from the database, you have to manually go into your DBML, you have to delete the existing entity, you have to drag a new one back on, remake any changes you wanted. It's going to regenerate the code in the background. It's a lot of work. It's a bit of a hassle. And also, it's not going to, when you destroy those entities, it's not going to preserve custom changes you've made. You've got to wipe them out and remake them again. It's not going to intelligently look at your database and say, oh, you added a table, or you added a field or a property. It's not going to know these things. It's not very refactor friendly. With Plinqo, we take care of that for you. So not only are we going to be generating initial DBML, which we just showed, but it's going to update the DBML for you on regeneration every single time. It's going to preserve the custom changes you make. If you go in and alter data types, or if you go in and rename properties, it's going to remember those, and it's going to keep those changes. Also, it's going to look at your database, and it's going to sync data changes you make. Again, adding new tables, adding rows, it's going to find them. It's going to bring them in for you. And this is really easy. You're just going to right-click regenerate, and it's just going to do all that in a very intelligent manner. Also, it has metadata classes that are in the actively generated files. Obviously, the metadata is being updated because the whole file is being regenerated. But we have advanced new synchronization and merge strategies that are going to allow the passively generated files, to some extent, to be synchronized with the actively generated ones, which is a pretty cool feature. But before we talk too much about that, let's go and look at synchronization in action. So let's open up the DBML. I like this 1024 resolution. So okay, we're going to go into the account table here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make an update. We're going to change address 2, and we're going to rename it to address B. So a simple data change, just changing a property name. And then we're going to go into SQL Server Management Studio, and we're going to make a database change. We're going to go into that same table, and we're going to add a new row to it. We're going to add address 3. So what we've done here is we've made two different types of data changes, one to the code and one to the database. With Linq to SQL, you have to destroy your entity, drag it back on, make your custom change again. A lot of work. Plinqo, on the other hand, we're going to step back into Visual Studio. We're going to right-click. You save?
Huh?
You save?
I did.
OK. We're going to right-click. We're going to regenerate. And we're going to see what happens. It's telling us the files have been updated. And check it out. Address 3 has been added. It intelligently went out to the database, got that new field. And address B has been preserved. So easy. You right-clicked, you regenerated. It intelligently synchronized all your changes.
So I don't know if anybody's worked with a DBA that likes to uppercase all of his properties and put underscores in the middle. Kind of makes your .NET code look kind of bad. So you can come in here and you can change all of these to look pretty and nice. And Plinqo will maintain those properties for you.
OK, so now let's keep going. Let's go back to that slide.
The other thing we like to say, Tom, is it is PFM.
Pure friendly magic. Very regeneration friendly.
Friendly, yes. Oh, yeah. Friendly.
So OK, we just talked a little about the metadata classes. So let's talk about metadata. Dynamic data introduced the concept of the metadata class into .NET. And we at CodeSmith thought this was really cool. We like metadata. It makes working with attributes really easy. And what metadata does is it basically gives you a way to, it gives you a class you can use to add attributes to another class. Kind of a good way to dress them up. So in Plinqo, we've made a lot of things attribute-driven because we think that's the way to go. We think it works really well. It's really easy. And with our metadata classes, it makes things really easy to maintain. So let's talk about the Plinqo metadata classes. Every single entity in Plinqo has its own metadata class, and it is built into or generated into the passively generated file so that you can make edits and you can update it. Obviously, we're talking about attributes here, so it's attribute-driven. It's going to auto-generate attributes for you, but it's going to support you putting custom attributes on your classes and the properties inside of them. And it's going to intelligently merge all of those. You have a new merge strategy that's going to sync, again, the passively generated file with the actively generated file only the metadata class. It's very smart about what it's going to do. So it's going to preserve those changes. It's going to go so far as to even synchronize your using or import statements for you. So you're never going to have to worry about right-clicking, regenerating, and having a conflict or a naming resource issue. So the attributes it's going to take care of generating for you, it's going to put on dynamic data attributes. It's going to put on Plinqo rule attributes, which we're going to talk about later because Plinqo has a great rules engine built right into it. And it's even going to put on data annotation attributes. So just a lot of stuff it's going to throw on there for you right out of the box just by generating the first time. So let's go take a look at that. OK, so we have the metadata region in here. And inside of our product class, it has its own private metadata class. And all the properties that are in this class map one-to-one with the properties on the product class. So product has a name, a description, everything here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new property, or I'm sorry, a new attribute to description, because in our UI a moment ago, we saw that the description field is a single-line text box. Actually, we can go look at that again. Description, single-line text box. That's probably not what you want for description. You can put breaks in there. It can be long string. Having it this big, not very convenient. So we're going to add a multi-line text box attribute to that so that dynamic data will know to turn that into a multi-line box. And then we're going to make two other changes here. We're going to delete the name property off the metadata class. And we're going to remove the required attribute from category ID. So we've made three types of changes here. We've added a new attribute, we've removed an attribute, and we've removed a property, which has now made our class, our metadata class, out of sync with the generated file. That property should be there. So we're going to regenerate again, and we're going to see what Plinqo does. Notice the name property came back. It knew it needed to synchronize with the backend file, so it added it back in. However, the UI hint has been preserved, and the category ID, or I'm sorry, the attribute on the UI hint, the UI hint attribute on the description has been preserved, and the required attribute in category ID has been removed. And also, again, everything outside of the metadata class was not affected. All that code remains the same. Anything you type there, it's not going to go away. So you can still edit this class. It's going to take care of managing that metadata for you. So if we rebuild, we'll notice that Plinqo is now going to use, or the dynamic data site is now going to use a multi-line text field for description. Ta-da.
Nice.
So metadata, really good stuff. Plinqo uses it a lot, and we're going to keep coming back to it.
Plinqo offers two ways to manage your data or query your data. There's two different patterns of doing this. The first one that I'll talk about is the manager pattern. If you like to encapsulate all of your data logic or business logic into predefined methods that contain the entire query, that pull back the data at one time, if you need to do this ahead of time, then the manager pattern is for you. The manager pattern also takes advantage of the precompiled queries that are offered by Linq to SQL. The other pattern that we offer with Plinqo is the query pattern or query extensions. This offers a composable way of generating the filters or queries that you want to get your data back. What the query pattern does is when I say composable, it allows you to chain the methods together. Plinqo will generate a get method for every property on your entity. So if you need to get different properties based on different values and different orders, you can do that with the query extensions, which also obviously takes full advantage of reuse. So we're going to go in and we're going to take our first look at our tracker application that we've been playing with. And tracker is just a small little database that we've been messing with. But this is the project that'll be out that you can download later. It's a small application, has a couple of tables in it, but we're going to use it to demonstrate some of the functionality, or a lot of the functionality and features of Plinqo. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the difference in managers and queries. As you see with the manager method, we have a get by assigned ID, status ID. When you generate using the manager pattern, that will generate all your foreign key and all your index methods. The assigned ID and status ID is an index composed of multiple columns on the task table, so the manager generated that method for us. Down lower in the query extensions, you see a by assigned ID and a by status ID. So you can get the task by assigned ID, by status ID, and you can compose that query however you like. Another thing I want to point out about these two is that there is only one call being made to the database by both methods. No matter how many of the methods that you change together, with Linq to SQL, you just get one call to the database. So let's run this test.
Nice little code window here.
So we'll open up the code window so we can see it. Then we have one task, ID 278. We got one task back. You guys have to trust us. That's how it worked. Same task, same thing going on there. So you get the same data back from both of these methods, just two different ways of doing things, two different methods. Whatever method fits you and is the one that you should use.
When you say you can compose your SQL, where is the SQL stored?
Linq actually generates that SQL for you. So it's an ORM. So when you compose these methods, the SQL is getting generated by Linq to SQL, and then it makes the call of the database. What you can do while you're running these tests, when you download it later, is that you can open up Profiler in Management Studio, and you can see the SQL that's being run. And
at the very beginning, where you set the
sorry?
At the very beginning, where you set the connected string, that kind of connection.
That's a CodeSmith feature. In CodeSmith, when you open up.
I didn't see that. I mean, when you create, use your
Oh, you mean in the project?
when you create the project and where you set the connection stuff to the database, where.
That's sitting in your web.config. The quick start actually creates all that for you based on the data source that you create using CodeSmith.
But we have to go the web.config to connection to that.
No, it's actually right here. When we ran the quick start, your connection string is right there. So we created that using CodeSmith, and then Plinqo will generate that connection string for you.
Okay.
So Tom, why don't you tell us about your many-to-many relationships?
It's a fairly common practice in databases. So many-to-many, not natively supported by Linq to SQL. Plinqo, however, right out of the box, generates many-to-many relationships. Your entities will have a many-to-many collection attached to them if they are associated with many-to-many table or join table. And it's not just a parlor trick. It's going to intelligently manage these association rows. It's not just getting back a list of them. It's going to know when it needs to create, read, update, or delete those join rows. So pretty neat feature that, again, is going to work right out of the box. So let's go back and look at those unit tests again, because I think it's the best way to show off some of these features. OK, yes. So the first thing we want to show you is the database schema we're dealing with here. We have a user table and a role table. And there's a join table called user role between them. So a user may have many roles, and a role may have many users. Many. So we go and look at our test. We're going to notice that what we're going to do here is really simple. We're going to get back a user from our context. We're going to get back a role from the context. And then the user just has a role list attribute on it, just generated by default right out of the box. And that role list is the collection of its many-to-many association. So all we have to do is do role list.add and add that role to it. And Plinqo is going to handle managing that, that association. So that new row in the middle is going to get added. So notice we have 3 rows right now in our join table. And if we go ahead and run this with the unit tests, we should be creating a 4th. So we got our user, we got our role. We have added our role to the user's role list. We step down one more line. We've submitted changes. We go look. And sure enough, user 1017 now has role 2. So many-to-many. A common practice feature, Linq to SQL does not support. Plinqo does. And I just want to point out here that we make a joke with Mighty Mouse, and here Plinqo comes to save the day. That's actually the theme of what we're trying to do here. We really liked Linq to SQL when we played with it, but we thought there were certain things where it wasn't delivering, or it just didn't do it all, such as many-to-many. And when we made Plinqo, we tried to fix all that. We tried to make Linq to SQL better. So another feature we add right out of the box, enum generation. Plinqo automatically identifies enum tables. When you regenerate, it's going to automatically update those enum tables. When it generates its enums, it's going to include values, text, and even descriptions. So your IntelliSense is going to make sense. It's going to populate that kind of stuff for you. These enums are all generated in one file for each data context. And the best feature, at least in my opinion, is it replaces association types with enums. So what are we talking about when we say that? Again, let's go look at code. OK, so we get a task back, and a task is associated with a priority table. So it has a key to the priority table. And priority is pretty much what it sounds like. Priorities may be high, normal, low. This is a pretty common practice. And with other ORMs, or with normal Linq to SQL, you just have a magic number. It's priority 1, 2, 5, whatever it would be. That's not very descriptive. It's not very intuitive. So Linq to SQL, in this case, has generated an enum from the priority table. And if we right-click and go to definition, we can look at that.
I'll just hit F12, Tom.
That's easier. So we have a public enum here. It's of type integer, which is what the primary key on the priority table was. And it has the 3 rows as its 3 values: high, normal, low. It's got its summary. It's got its description that have all come out of the table. And now if we go back to the test, we can see that the task.priorityD is actually of that enum type, as opposed to just being an integer. And so when we set it equal to something, we can just say equals priority high. So again, a very intuitive way to read that, as opposed to a magic number.
Which priority high is always the default setting for any task that we're assigned. So.
Of course. So now let's go into SQL Server Management Studio again, and we're going to add another row to that table. And we're going to watch Plinqo regenerate and add that enum, or add that value to the enum table. So we're going to add very low, something I guess no one would really want to deal with.
How does it know which tables?
Nice. It identifies them with regex values that you can set in the DBML CST, which is configurable inside of the CSP we looked at earlier. Who asked?
I can actually show you that real quick if you want. There's
so
right there.
By default, it's searching for, well, priority. I guess we kind of rigged this one.
It's a nice regex, isn't it?
That is a regex expression. So if you ended all your tables in type, so it was priority type or anything like that, it would detect, and I think actually that is our default, is any table ending in the suffix of type. It will automatically detect those tables and turn them into enums. So, OK.
Did you make it harder?
Next version, we'll see what we can do. OK, so we're going to right-click regenerate, more friendly magic. And it has now added very low to our enum table. Or not enum table, to our enum. So we come into our unit test, and now we alter this. So we're going to set it to very low as opposed to high. And when we run the test, it's going to work. It's a new foreign key association. It's going to know how to cast that enum to an int, and it's going to update our data for us. Notice priority is now very low. We can submit changes. And it went into the database without a problem.
Question.
Yeah?
In regards to synchronization for tables, do you have control over when you want a table to be pulled into your DBML? If there are changes happening in the database, you want to refresh, you want to pull in some changes, but not all changes.
Plinqo regenerates your whole project when you regenerate, but it's configurable with, it's very configurable with regex expressions. So your table exclude list is comprised of regex expressions. So if there's things you want to avoid pulling back in, you can put them in that exclusion list with a regex statement. Shannon?
Another thing that we're faced with at times when we're, I say many times that we're faced with is when updates or inserts or edits or deletes happen in our system, we always have somebody asking us to tell them what happened was. So I didn't do that very well, but I'm trying. Give me a break. Well, anyway, Plinqo gives us the option to audit. When you Linq to SQL uses the unit of work pattern. So when you execute submit changes, all of your changes that have been tracked are committed to the database at that point. So what Plinqo will do is it will track all of those for you, and it will create a nice object for you to manage what just happened. What it will do is it'll track inserts, updates, deletes, and it will also only track what actually was updated, what actually was inserted. You can do this on entities. You can also do it on properties. And as it says there, you can record who did it and when they did it. Also, the features can be turned on and off. As you're probably figuring out, is there's a theme of attributes here. Auditing uses attributes as well. You can turn auditing on and off for a specific field, or you can turn it on and off for the entity. So you can audit what you want. Let's go look at that test. So what we'll see here is that we have a couple of updates going on. We have an update to the user. We have an insert to a task. So we have two updates, then we're going to submit changes. Let's go take a look at the entity first, though. Now we're into the entity. Yes, into the metadata class. You see these attributes sitting on top. The audit attribute on top of the user class indicates that we do want this entity to be audited. We have an audit table or entity in Tracker as well. That attribute is not placed on top of that because we did not want that. That's actually holding all of our audits. Why would we want to audit that? So we have the ability to take that audit off. By default, every one of the properties inside of this entity will be audited. However, in this particular entity, we have some system set fields in created date and modified date. Also, I think there's a last activity date or something like that, that the system actually sets. We don't want those audited because those change every time the system changes them. We don't care. So we can add the not audited attribute to the top of that property, and it won't be audited. Let's go back to the test. Let's run this test. And as you can see here, after submit changes is executed, we have a context.lastAudit. That is the object that contains what just happened. So let's look at that object for a second. In the object, you have the date, you have the entities, you have the username. We're in a unit test right now, so what the username will do is if you're logged into a web app or a Windows app, it'll record who is logged in and stick it there. So it happened at 7:03. There were two entities updated. Let's look at the entities. We had an insert on a task. It tells you the action, and it tells you which properties were updated. In this case, all the properties were updated because we had an insert. Well, let's look at the user. The user was an update. The user only had one property get changed. So now we know that the comment was changed. It was changed at 7:03. And now we want to vote Baltar and move to New Caprica. So we know that. We can tell what it was before and what it is now. The other thing that you can see is we have the 2XML on the end of it. One way that we've been using it is that we'll generate out the XML, we'll store it that way, and then you can actually use XSLT to present the audit in a nice manner if you like. That's just how we're doing it. Yes, sir. Not currently. I mean, it does print out the XML. You can see the XML that it generates right here. We haven't actually used it in that manner yet, so that's the first time we've been asked that question. I'm sure that it wouldn't be too hard to hook it up yourself to do that. I can't answer that right now. I don't know.
It would be real easy to tie in the enterprise library and log into a text file or a database or system log or whatever you want.
Yeah, but I'd like
You can just modify the template to wrap your own logging method and put this output wherever you want.
We'll move on for right now then. So what you can see here is that you can see the XML that is generated by default by the audit log. You can see the status for the task, and you can see that you do have a nicely formatted, nicely generated XML for your auditing.
Where is this getting audited?
Sorry?
Where is this getting audited into tables?
No, it's audited right to the object, so you can do whatever you want with it. Like, I'll show you in a little bit. We're sticking it into a table in a sample app, in the sample tracker app. But as far as how it comes out of the box, it really is open for you to do whatever you want with it. We didn't assume what you would want to do. Let's put it that way. Yeah, that's what I mentioned. I'm sorry. You can, with the attributes there, you can turn it off. You can knock the attribute off. You can, if that attribute is not there, the entity is not audited.
The classes are inclusive, so you have to specifically mark them to be audited, as opposed to the properties have to be marked not to be audited. So if you remove that attribute from every class, nothing gets audited.
What about hit to performance with auditing? Is there significant hit?
I assume not. I haven't seen any hits to it at all. No.
Well, the performance, what kind of performance you guys add to the, I'm assuming, for example, I'm taking the real time,
We do not have any published benchmarks. We've had several clients use it. We have not had any reports of performance issues with it.
We also have a slide later on that actually specifically addresses some performance improvements we do try to make. So we will actually get there.
So the next thing, based on this conversation, that we need to talk about is the fact that Plinqo rules. Oh, wait, no. Plinqo rules is what we're going to talk about. So that joke did not go over well at all, did it?
I think we need audience participation.
Yes. Help me out here. Thank you. Well, anyway, Plinqo has rules. Plinqo has a built-in rules engine. It's attribute-driven, as is everything so far. So it's attribute-driven as well. You can set your rules on top of the properties within the metadata class, just like you could on auditing. These also execute on submit changes. So when submit changes is called, Plinqo will go and look at all of the rules that you set up. If any of those rules are broken, then it dives right out of the submit changes and does not allow the entity to be updated, inserted, or deleted based on the rules that you set up. These rules are automatically generated a lot of times. Say you have you have rules set up in your database. Say you have required fields in your database. Those attributes are automatically generated on the properties. So those fields are, in that particular case, those attributes are added. Those fields are required. What other rules, like maybe you have string length of 50 or something like that, varchar 50. Also, that kind of rule can be generated as well, in that it will limit that property string to 50 characters. Also, custom programmatic rules are supported. You can either add, or there's an add shared rules partial method on each entity. So in your editable custom, your class that is editable, you can add into this add shared method any custom rules that you want. These rules can, I guess let's go look at a test real quick. I can explain it better with the test.
So open this up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Rules.
Okay, so as you see here, we created a new instance of a user, and we're attempting to insert that user without doing anything to it. That's against the rules. We have required fields. We also have a custom programmatic rule as well. So if you go look at the user object for a second.
Which I had open anyway, but I like clicking a whole lot.
And I noticed you did go to definition. So in the user object, you see the required fields are set up for you. We also have what we call assign rules on the system fields that I mentioned a minute ago. So the now attribute is actually built by Plinqo. In this case, in a created date, anytime a new entity is inserted into the database, we want that field to be populated with the current time. Also, on modified date, anytime that entity is updated, we want to update that modified date to when it was last updated. You can control with the attributes that action. With the entity state.new, you can tell it only when this entity is inserted into the database, we want that value to be set. Dirty, that means that anytime this object is dirty, we'll update that date. So that's an example of some of the attribute rules. Also, let's go up a little bit. This is an example of a custom rule. In the add shared rules, which I mentioned a second ago, is a partial method. Let's go into the user exists. User exists is a class. implements iRule. In the iRule class, the iRule implementation. In the userExistRule class, you can specifically set a custom error message. You can also set the priority in case you want to create several rules and you want to control the order in which the rules execute, in case you have dependencies. And then there's a run that brings in a rule of context, and then context.success is how you determine whether that rule succeeded or not. So if we'll run that test, keep getting your way now. Now we see a broken rule exception has been thrown. If we look at the count, 4. So there's 4 broken rules. So let's look at the rules. Each rule, you can look inside the rule. You can see exactly which rule is broken in the message. In this case, we have a password salt. We have that required. And we know that broke the required rule. And each of the rules in the broken rules collection will show you the exact data that caused that rule to break. So if you go ahead and run it through, finish the test.
Oh.
The toString on the rules will also give you a nice representation of what went on as well. So we can see that the 4 rules broke the required field. The userExists rule actually passed because we didn't set anything, so it doesn't exist. So that rule was not broken. So you can, when you run the toString method, you can see in a pretty text format everything that happened.
Notice also it was entity specific. So if you're submitting changes with multiple entities that are dirty and are going to get updated, it's going to tell you not only which rules broke, but which object they broke for.
Exactly. So Tom, why don't you tell us how you feel about commitment?
Low priority tasks, many jokes. I feel like I'm in Office Space or something. Okay, so Linq to SQL is clingy. It does not like to let go of its entities. Plinqo, on the other hand, no no anxiety about separation. All entities implement a detach method. This is something that is absent from Linq to SQL that we have added that is really useful. Specifically, when is this great for? Asynchronous code, data caching, or just good old-fashioned complex logic where entities have to get passed around or something involving multiple data contexts. So again, to narrate this, let's step into some code. So what we're going to do here is we have 2 data contexts. The first one we're going to get a task from, and then we're going to detach that task. So notice the entity has implemented a detach method. And then outside, we're going to step outside that using statement, so the data context is now disposed and gone. And here, we're going to actually update that task. And we're going to make, this is an offline change. We got an entity from that context. We're making a detached change here. And then when we step back into another data context, we create a new one. And we go to attach that task. We're going to mark it as dirty because we made changes to it. That's what that Boolean is for. And then this is where usually Linq to SQL would blow up. It would tell you, it doesn't have an attach method. It would tell you, we cannot attach an entity that is already attached to a context. And you'd have an exception, you'd get very mad, and wouldn't be able to do anything with that code. But here, we're able to attach that to the other context and submit changes, and that's going to get submitted into the database. So let's go ahead and run that. So okay, we hit our breakpoint. We've pulled the task out of our context. We've detached it. Now that context is gone. We're going to make our change. And then we're going to step down through the next, or run through the next using statement. And notice it submitted changes, and that change went in the database. No problems. Again, it's a simple feature, but it's one that Linq to SQL is missing. And for anyone who's ever had a need for that, it's extremely handy to have this. So, more things that Plinqo adds over Linq to SQL. WCF and data services. Linq to SQL support for these, not that great. Deferred loading problems and serialization issues just absolutely plague Linq to SQL when you're working with WCF. Also, there's no support for data services from the designer. You need to implement certain interfaces and other things that the designer with Linq to SQL just does not do. Plinqo takes care of that for you. It's going to add data service attributes to your entities. It's going to implement data service interfaces that are required. it's going to go so far as to even have the quick start set up a data services automatically for you. That was one of the fields in the quick start, and we had it true. It's set up that project to enable data services. And also, to help support WCF, Plinqo is going to enable serialization and cloning. To talk more about that, my boss, who never gives me a hard time about anything, Shannon.
No cloning support in Linq to SQL by default, by standard. However, in Plinqo, all of our entities implement iClonable, which means, as you probably guessed, you can do a .clone on all of the entities. What that does is it completes a memory. I'm getting that out. Okay, a complete memory copy of the object, disconnected from the data context. So you have a completely separate object. The original object is completely untouched. So you have a new object. You can do whatever you want with that object. So it is that easy. So we'll show a quick unit test for this. So as you see, all you have to do is call the clone method. In this case, we're just calling the clone, setting the ID to 0, inserting. So we have a new task. We can insert it. It's that easy. That's all that you have to do when it comes to clone. So next, serialization. Plinqo takes advantage of WCF serialization. When we were first working with Linq to SQL, we had all sorts of issues with circular references when it comes to Linq to SQL. So what we ended up doing is taking advantage of WCF serialization. So each entity gets a 2XML method on it as well, which, as you might have guessed, working with JSON when it comes to Linq to SQL is a lot easier if you can easily serialize your methods and send them back to the client. So I guess we can look at a quick test of this as well, which, as you'll probably guess, is calling the 2XML method.
Wow, how did you know?
It looks very easy at this point, but in regular Linq to SQL, that is not as easy. So if you will run that test, we'll look at what an XML serialized Plinqo object looks like. Just let it go, or hit run at the end. Let it go out. Go look back at the console.
Yep.
So all we'd have to do is call 2XML on that entity, and you get a nice serializable object generated for you. So Tom, why don't you tell us how you feel about performance enhancement?
With Plinqo, it's really nice. So, hopefully so far you've been finding some of these features pretty cool, pretty interesting. I think these are really fun ones. We said we were going to address some performance improvements. Well, here we are. The first thing that Plinqo is going to offer is batch updates and deletes. And this is really cool stuff. It's going to use user-friendly Linq queries. It does not require objects to be loaded into memory, and does not require submit changes, which is really cool. If you want to update an entity in Linq to SQL, you have to get that entity, bring it back, so that's one round trip to your SQL server. Then you have to update those entities, or in delete case, send a notification to the server and tell it to be deleted, which is 2 round trips. With batch updates and deletes, you can cut that in half. Just one. You can go out and do something and come back. So, again, let's go look at code. So what our batch update is going to do here is Linq is obviously generating select statements. You want to get an entity back, it's going to select it, bring it back to you. This is going to generate an update statement. So what we do is we just call task.update, and we're going to update task objects in the task table. So the first line here is the select, or the query, what you're going to do. So we're looking for any task where the status ID is status not started. And then we're going to update anything that matches that criteria by setting its status to done. So this is going to generate an update statement. It's going to go out to the server, and it's going to come back with the response. You did not have to load all these entities into memory and then send them back down. It's going to do it in one swoop. Right beneath that,
I apologize, Tom.
it's okay. Right beneath that, we're going to see an extremely similar task, but done with a different syntax, just to show how flexible this is. So here, instead of using a lambda statement, we're actually using a Linq statement. And again, we're going to select tasks, but this time we're going to say where the status is done, and we're going to set it back to being status not started. So let's go ahead and look at the database real quick so we can see what we're going to play with, what data.
Is this your code or was it generated?
These unit tests are our code. And these will all be online to look at, though. OK, so we have 2 rows in there, and both their status IDs are 1. And because it's not an enum, I don't know what that means, magic number. So we're going to set that to status ID of... Did it just run all the way through?
Yeah, it did.
I think we need another breakpoint.
Let's do that again.
OK, status ID of 1. We're doing the first update. First update statement has gone out. Notice both statuses have been updated to 6. So that update statement did multiple rows, and it did it in one call to the database. The second update is going to do the same thing. Only this time it's going to switch it back. And the status has been returned status ID 1. Yeah?
Can you profile that?
You want to profile it?
We can do that.
All right. Kind of questions up to the driver. Yes?
Okay, quick question. Does your auditing trigger also on that?
That's actually a good question. No, it does not. Okay.
Nice.
Yes, the batch updates actually bypass the rules and the auditing, but that's the principle of a update statement, though. It's going out and not bringing the data back. So. I think we did not hit a breakpoint.
I don't know what happened there. There we go. Now we're back.
Yay. OK. So we're going to do our update.
That's the update statement.
1 hit. Another update. Again, 1 hit.
If you were to do inserts,
Pardon?
if you were to do multiple inserts,
Mm-hmm.
would it have, if you're doing a batch insert, is that possible? You would have batch updates?
Well, with an insert, you would just create the entities in Linq to SQL and then set them to be inserted on submit. And that would just do 1 Linq to SQL write. So. OK, so batch delete. Again, we're talking about the same principle. It's going to make a delete statement instead of an update statement. It's going to go to the server, do its job, and come back with the result. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to delete a user just by his ID. So if you have an ID of someone you want to delete, why would you want to bring that data back in just to delete it again? Not really that useful. So we're going to delete just by ID. Visual Studio loves us today. So if we look at our users real quick, just to show you that this is actually happening. OK, we're going to be deleting William Adama here. So 1063. And he's gone. Next, we're going to do a delete. And this time it's going to be a batch. It's going to actually do a full query. It's supposed to do a single ID. So we're searching for anyone who is not approved in the system. Their last name is not Ty, but their address ends with battlestar.com. There are Battlestar fans in the audience, right? OK, making sure. So anyone whose last name was not Ty, but was not approved has been deleted. And now the last statement we're going to do here, and again, these are just different syntax for very similar tasks. We're using a Linq query. We're looking for anyone who's not approved again, but this time we want their name to be Ty. So if we look back at our table, notice we had Saul and Ellen here. And they're gone.
They're terminated. Okay.
He keeps liking to make Terminator jokes about Battlestar. I keep saying these are not compatible sci-fis, but Salvation's coming out soon, so. Anyway, batch updates and delete. Really useful stuff.
The other thing that you might want to do on several occasions is have a stored procedure that returns multiple result sets, reports, I don't know. There's several reasons to have stored procedures with multiple result sets. In using standard Linq to SQL, you cannot do this with the designer. It will not allow you to, or there's just no way to do it. So what we've done with Plinqo is we've given the ability to generate stored procedures with methods off your context that you can return multiple result sets and get those results. So let's look at that test.
Oh, it was already open.
So what we have is we have a get users with roles stored procedure that's already in the tracking database that we've already saved, and we've already generated it. And what you see off the context, you see the same name for the stored procedure, context.getUsers with roles. And what this will do is this will go to the database, execute the stored procedure, and come back and give you those results in an multiple results collection. So what you can do is, as you see here, is you can step through those results and see the results that are returned from your stored procedure. That returns multiple result sets. So let's do that real quick. So as you can see here, we went to the database. We executed the get users with roles stored procedure. We have a list of users, 9, and we have their roles. So it is very easy with Plinqo to execute stored procedures with multiple result sets. All we had to do is create the stored procedure and then generate Plinqo, and you get the results. So if you don't want to use stored procedures, there's also another way to do this.
Say, what if you're one of those developers that doesn't like stored procedures? You want to write everything in C#. I want to write my code right there. I mean, I'm one of those people. So batch queries, essentially the same thing, right? Stored procedure is going to make multiple select statements. It's going to bring them back for you. Well, why can't I do that with queries? Linq to SQL, you're writing queries. Why can't we batch them up? Now you can. We support batch queries, and that's off any data context query. And again, obviously, this is a major performance improvement. If you're going to go get 5 things, 5 transactions linked to SQL, put them in one batch. Get it all back at once. And again, let's go look at code, which some people like test-driven development, TDD. We like test-driven demos.
Nice.
So OK, if we look at the code here, we're creating 2 linked to SQL queries. Very, very simple ones, just like the stored procedure had. We're going to select all users out of the user table. We're going to select all user roles out of the user role table. So same thing. But here, when we call context.executeQuery, we're passing in the 2 query objects. The executeQuery method is going to execute both those simultaneously and bring back, again, an multiple result set entity that's going to contain all that data. We then pull it out with the get results in the same way from the stored procedures, and it's going to cast them the appropriate types. So we get users 9 and roles 3, same numbers. So batch queries, again, that's like a really cool performance improvement. Specifically directed at the question of performance improvement, that can really make a big difference for anyone who doesn't like going to the database 5 times to get 1 set of data back. And by the way, that actually works with the load options on a data context. So if you set something to load with, and you do a query that's going to bring back multiple result sets, it will still preserve what it's going to load with. So it'll bring back all that data. It's not limiting.
So what we did is we created a
question?
Sorry.
Just a quick question. How does it know which data table it's loading in there? Is it just by the sequence order that you have? That's what I was trying to tell you.
Yes, it is by order, actually. That's how multiple result set works. It reads them out in order.
So if you change your stored procedure the order of returns, you need to change that in code also.
Yes.
What we did is we created a little MVC sample app using Plinqo. Since we generate the dynamic data app with the Quick Start, we thought we'd create a little sample using MVC as well. And as you can probably tell, I did not run this on 1024 by 768 when we were playing around with it, so it is a sample. So bear with me on that. Tom, why don't you log in? and we will take a look at just a few of an application of the features that we've gone through in the test. So let's look at the users list. So we'll see we have a few users here, and let's edit Leroy. Edit Leroy. So what we can do here is, you see, you have the roles, we have the user, so we're taking advantage of the many-to-many relationships. Now let's add a comment. How about my life is measured by the size of my cache? You're not going to do that.
Okay.
You have 2 is's. Thank you. So now we'll save that. So what you can see down here at the bottom is we've made this change a couple times. At first we had my life is measured with cache, but then we deleted it. And then we decided that it's measured by the size of my cache. So we could see that the audit was made a couple of times. And that kind of demonstrates the auditing and how you can make it look using XSLT. So let's run back up.
This means that, yes, this was rehearsed.
Thank you, Tom. So,
Busted.
let's add a role for Mr. Penton. How about nobody? So we can add Leroy to the nobody role. So now we know who Leroy is. So another thing that we can do, yes, let's go to the tasks. Let's add a task. I guess first of all you could go back. Even though we only have one task here, I have the select all and none. If you had a bunch of tasks, you can select the status and automatically update it. That uses the update functionality of selecting multiple items and updating. So let's create a task. We'll go back to that. How about let's assign Eric. Priority low, obviously. So let's click the status, the normally not started.
Ooh.
And then what task did you need to create for Eric?
We give Eric tasks?
Yes.
Side checks.
They're just never done. Do work. Yes. Nice. Nice and concise. Very.
For a raise, Tom.
Oh, that's a good one. Click save or click create. Oh wait, Tom's in the noob role. And we're checking, and in this little sample app, noobs cannot create tasks, so Tom cannot create a task.
Shannon, would you like to log in and create a task?
Sure.
So I'm sure you're in the manager role.
I will do that.
Super manager.
Wow, Tom. So this is just a little sample app to play around with. And you can download it and see how Plinqo, we've set up a few, obviously with the noobs not being able to assign tasks, we have a custom rule that demonstrates that. We have many-to-many relationships. Assign Tom as usual. Rehearsed. And create. And I can create a task because I am not a noob, as you will be able to see over here. Manager. Wow, I can create tasks for the noobs. What else? Oh yeah, back in the tasks, you can see that we have a little bit of a clone. You can copy a task. That just kind of gives you a little idea of how the clone works. And one thing that all the drop-down lists that are loaded, we were playing around with just storing those in cache because that's how Leroy's measured, so we needed to do that. So that is a quick demo of the multiple batch or getting the multiple result sets back. So if you download this app and just go through it a little bit, play with it a little bit, you can see a lot of the features that we talked about tonight. And that's, unless I forgot anything, that is about it.
You want to show a batch update real quick?
I can. Thank you, Tom. Select all. Done. Nice. Okay.
And again, under the hood, this is using all the stuff we've talked about tonight. So that is our presentation over Plinqo and its features that it offers over Linq to SQL. If you liked what you saw here, please check out Plinqo.com. Pardon me?
Go ahead. I don't know how to do that.
We've got a Google Docs noob here. So please check out Plinqo.com. It's got lots of information for you, tutorials, examples, even video tutorials for that matter. Its downloads include nightly builds, so you can get the latest and greatest version of Plinqo. And I think you saw at the quick start how easy it is when you grab that just to get started, throw yourself into it. Also, please check out CodeSmithTools.com. And Shannon, do you want to make the announcement?
Well, CodeSmith 5.1 is released today. And most of you guys, I think, will receive a copy. So go out there and check that out. See how that works for you. And as always, we have our CodeSmith community. So if you have any questions, there is a Plinqo forum on there. So you can go and ask your questions in the Plinqo forum and get answers to your questions. So it uses community server, so you tell me.
And we haven't picked on him much at all tonight, but we have to get a little something in. So if you want to contact us, please feel free not to email sales@codesmithtools.com. Email Eric@codesmithtools.com. Send him all your feedback, all your spam. Get him good.
And that is it tonight. Thanks, guys, for coming. Thanks for listening to us.